Last week we did a webinar in conjunction with the National Garden Bureau, and in the comments throughout that hour, we had gotten so many questions related to lights and how they affect seed starting. So we thought we'd take a deeper dive into the many questions people have about lighting. So Vic is here today, our lighting engineer, and we can answer as many questions as you have. You can pose those questions in the comments on this video. You can also reach us through our website, and we'd be happy to answer anything you've got. If I want to convert to LED lights this year, what kind works best? Well, I will tell you that the short answer is to get yourself some happy leaf lights, because we've done all of the research and the work for you, so you don't have to weed through a lot of the information and misinformation. But Vic, what would you say to that?
That's an answer that would take me a while to actually get fully answered, but I could tell you if you're converting from a T8 fluorescent or a T5 fluorescent, you normally have to put those lights like 6 to 8 inches or 6 to 7 inches above the plants. With a good quality LED light, you can set the light like 12 inches up above your seed starters, and you can cover a really large area. We're working with an extension at Purdue University, and they had actually 8 T8 fluorescents, and we replaced it with one of our Procyon Pro lights to cover the entire area, which was a 2 by 4 foot area for incredibly good seed starting. But then you can also use that light the rest of the year to continually grow all sorts of other things to full maturity. So that's a nice part of having a good quality LED light. You can use it not only for seed starting, but you can use it for the rest of the year to grow incredibly great food at home.
So what should they look for when they're doing this conversion? What makes a LED light great?
Well, having the right quantity of light. The units are really crazy. They're micromoles per square meter per second, but we take care of that and we tell you how high to put it up so you can really get incredibly good seed starting, but also the quality of light. So by working with a professor at Purdue, we've developed our lights where the ratio of the red to blue to green is optimized, so your plants are robust, they absorb nutrients really well, and that's true for both seedlings or seed starting as well as plants that you're growing to full maturity.
So when we talk about quality of light, you hear things like foot candles, lumens, watts. What are we really looking for in a good grow light?
So yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions out there that when you're looking for any kind of light that's visible to your eye, you hear things like lumens, foot candles, lux, and those are all measurements of light for white light that you and I actually use to see with. Our eyes are very sensitive to green and yellow light, but plants are much more sensitive to blue and red light. So they need a wider range of light than what is measured typically with either the lumen measurement or a foot candle measurement. So disregard anything related to lumens, foot candles, anything related to visible light. What you really are more interested in is what light the plants need. And I call that the quantity of light. So our lights, in this case, happy leaf lights, are designed so that they give the plants the right quantity of light as well as the right quality of light. When I say quality, that's the red to blue to green light. And if you get that ratio just right, not only do the plants look incredibly good, they'll look like they're under a 2900 Kelvin white light because of that right mixture, but you're also going to get incredibly robust plant growth and seed starting where your plants are going to be really sturdy and strong. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of idea of how to select the right kind of light.
So what you're saying is happy leaf lights are dialed into the right wavelengths that plants actually use to grow and perform well, not necessarily what looks good to humans.
Exactly right. But they actually will also look good to humans if you design the right light to be just perfect. That's why you can use these lights in your living room and be very happy with the way your plants look, the way they grow, and you can use that light to read by as well.
Oh, so you can do both. So what's going on with these lights that appear purplish?
Well, the older generation, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, and there are still some out there, what they did was only use red and blue LEDs. We call that purple light. And that's sort of an older generation light, even though they'll make your plants grow okay if you have the right intensity, but it won't make your plant look very good, and you're surely not going to want that in your living room.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the quality of light. What about the quantity of light? What makes a bulb put out the right amount of light?
So, I guess we mentioned earlier the terminology of lumens and foot candles. Again, that is a measure of the intensity of light that our eyes see. But to measure the intensity of light that plants see, you use a meter that may look like this. It's called a PAR meter, which stands for photosynthetically active radiation. It's the energy that plants need to grow. In most cases, it's actually still in the same range of light that we actually see, but our eyes are not very sensitive to blue and red light. And this meter actually picks all of that energy up very accurately so that you actually can capture how much light your plants need to grow. So with a PAR meter, in order to get excellent seed starting and let's say microgreen growing, you want a reading on a meter like this of anywhere from 50 to 150. And with a fluorescent light, that's very difficult to do. You actually have to be very close. You have to be something like 4 to 6 inches away to get maybe 75. With an LED light, that's very easy to do. In fact, you could be up a foot and get values like 200 to 300. The units are micromoles of photons per square meter per second. It's called photon flux density. You don't need to know that, but that's basically how we design our lights to ensure that you get enough energy on your plants for seed starting and for full production. If you want to use the same light to grow your plants to full maturity, is all you have to do is bring it down a little bit. Then you're going to be like 6 to 8 inches up, and you're going to get 200 to let's say 400 micromoles. So you can use the same LED light. A good high quality LED light will allow you to grow everything from seed starting to microgreens to all the way up to tomatoes, cucumbers, beets, carrots, radishes. Obviously, things like lettuces and herbs are also very easy to grow at home.
Are you saying that seedlings need less light intensity and we can get closer as the plant matures?
That's true. You really don't need high levels of intensity. So LEDs can very easily give you that level of intensity by raising them up high enough, and that gives you a much larger area to start your seeds in. And then as the plants get larger, whether you're trying to just get them larger indoors or whether you're planning to actually grow them to full maturity indoors, you would just bring that light a little bit closer, and that gives you a little bit more light. Now, in reality, what happens is you're automatically getting closer because the plants are growing up towards the light.
Okay. So in terms of these PAR values, you said you needed 50 to 150 for seed starting. So what's next? So we have a seedling or a more mature plant. What values do they need?
Well, and if you're just seed starting, when the plant gets to be whatever height you're comfortable with planting it, in my case, tomatoes are often 8 to 12 inches tall when I plant them, you will have gotten, in that 100 to 150, 200 micromole range before you plant them. But then if you want to grow that plant to full maturity, for instance, tomatoes, I usually would shoot for 200 to 400 micromoles per square meter per second. And that's simply done by just setting the light a little bit closer to the plant.
Okay.
And then you can let the plant absorb that energy and produce tomatoes for you all year long.
I've been seed starting for a long time, and I always used to use fluorescents, which a lot of people use because it was the only thing available to us before LEDs came out. When I first started using Happy Leaf, I grow a lot of seeds, so I had my fluorescents still set up to get more plants going. And, they both came up pretty good. Well, I really noticed the difference, though, once they were seedling stage. My ones under fluorescents really got leggy, and my ones under Happy Leaf just continued to stay green and stocky and very healthy and strong looking. What's the difference there?
Well, there were probably two reasons for that. One is you weren't getting enough energy. The quantity of light wasn't enough. The power value was too low, and they get leggy because they're reaching for light. So that's one of the issues. But the other is, again, it comes down to having the right quality. That red to blue to green ratio eventually becomes very important to that plant. So red lights cause plants to grow up and become really tall. Blue lights make the plant strong and the stems grow to the side more.
Okay.
Whereas green light does two things. One is it penetrates. If you actually think about it, the reason that plants look green to us is because some of that green light is reflected from the plant. So then your eye sees that green and it looks green.
Oh, okay.
But it also penetrates that plant. Doesn't always, get absorbed, but penetrates. So it gets down to the lower leaves. So those are two reasons that green is important. But the fact that you want to see a green plant, that's probably actually the most important thing, is that it reflects some of that light. You don't want to see a purple plant. You want to see a green
Right.
plant in your living room.
Right.
So,
But that would explain why my happy leaf plants were just much stronger and greener.
It's that
They
right
were much
ratio,
greener too.
Yep, it's that right ratio of red to blue to green
Okay.
that really makes them look good and grow really strong and absorb nutrients really well.
And
too. That's very
fluorescents don't
important.
have any.
The fluorescents, you can't control those colors. They are what they are. Sometimes they say, well, you want a higher color temperature, which is a little bit more blue in it, which makes them stronger stems, but that's still nowhere near the amount of blue that you can get with the right mixture of LEDs.
Okay. And is there any green in them? Or a red?
In a fluorescent?
Yeah.
Well, a fluorescent is a very, very broad spectrum. It's that mercury that's inside it that's glowing that gives you a specific ratio of light spectrums.
Okay.
But it's with the LEDs, you can tune it to exactly what you want. Whereas with a fluorescent, you can't do that nearly as well.
Okay. So it's really dialing in much more
Yep.
specifically to
The ability
plants'
to
needs of
dial it
fluorescent.
in is one of the magics
Okay.
of LEDs. And the other thing that's really important with LEDs is LEDs themselves are very directional. They actually put all their light straight down. Whereas
Okay.
if you think about a fluorescent tube, you have to put reflectors around it and you're trying to shoot that light down. So typically a good quality LED is about 5 times more efficient in producing the right kind of light than a fluorescent tube is. So that's one of the other reasons with the same amount of energy, you're going to get 5 times more useful light to your plants.
And nothing's being wasted because it's
going
pointing down
straight-
where a fluorescent's lighting up
Right.
all the way around.
It's going straight down, 120-degree beam angle right into your plants.
How much more cost effective are LEDs over fluorescents?
Well, it depends on how you want to look at it. Typically, an LED light may be a little more expensive to start with, but the reality is you're going to be using that light 10 to 15 years from now. There's really no reason for that light to ever go bad. But more importantly is that you're going to get much better plant growth. You can do a much bigger area with one light versus a lot more fluorescence, but you're going to use 4 to 5 times less energy, assuming you can get even the plant quality that you want to do the same thing. Our 33-inch light, which will cover roughly a 2 by 4 foot area, will actually only cost you about 7 cents a day to run, and that's the magic.
And I can get some pretty good coverage on a 33-inch light. I've used that kilowatt meter. You can
Yep.
test your washing machine and how much energy your appliances are
Yep.
sucking up. And I've used that on a fluorescent and a happy leaf,
Yep.
and they do draw much less.
Oh yeah, significantly less.
Well, one thing I can say, and I appreciate very much, is you said you could use it 10 to 15 years. With the LEDs, there's no bulbs to change and dispose of and worry
right.
about the mercury, and so that's definitely, to me, a very
Yep.
big benefit.
So there is a power supply that you plug into the wall, and then you
Okay.
plug the other side into the light, and it's external to the light. So if anything ever happens, 5-10 years from now, you may find your power supply doesn't work. Well, that's easily replaced.
Okay.
We give you a 5-year warranty on all of our lights. So if it happens in the first 5 years, you call us up and we get you another one. But if you have a problem 8 years from now, those are readily available and relatively inexpensive to replace. It's the light itself that's valuable, and it will last you for a very long time. Dare you actually to find another light out there that'll give you more than a year, or maybe up to 3 in some cases. But
So
give you
a good
5-year
warranty comes with Happy Leaf because we really
because we
stand.
stand behind what we make.
So I see grow lights at, the big box stores and online, and they say that they're full spectrum. Is that all I need?
So that's an interesting question. I hear that all the time for people that say, well, I've got a full spectrum light and it's going to do everything I want it to do. The word full spectrum is actually a marketing term, and all that it actually means is that it looks like a white light. But you can create white light many different ways. So the word for full spectrum for most grow lights is actually just a white LED, which is actually blue underneath, and they put a phosphor on it. So to our eye, it looks like a white or full spectrum light. But the problem is that's not necessarily what the plant necessarily needs. If you give it too much blue light, the plant will be short and stubby and not grow very much, I should say.
So full spectrum doesn't have anything to do with this ratio of red to green to blue?
Well, it does, because our eyes that are looking for white light. You can create white light either with a blue light with the phosphor on it, which is the way that the lights that you buy on Amazon and Home Depot are made. They're made typically in China, and it's easy and very inexpensive to make a white light, a full spectrum white light, and call it a grow light. But if you don't have the right ratio of red to blue to green, the plants won't necessarily give you the optimal growth. So then another way to get a full spectrum light is to mix those 3 primary light colors, the red to blue to green, in the right way to make it look white, but still give the plant exactly what it wants.
So full spectrum isn't a term that we should, if that's a marketing term, what kind of terminology are we looking for that really describes those wavelengths we want?
Ultimately, what you want is to look for a graph. And this is where I'm going to actually pull up a box of a light that's defined as a full spectrum white light. And you can see they do actually have some blue in here, which is actually good, but most of their light is right here. It's white light. It's going to look like a white LED, but they don't have nearly enough red, because you want your plants to get that red to get phenomenal plant growth. And you can see here the red is way down here low, but a lot of green light, which is actually, it's a combination of green and yellow actually right here. And that's not actually what the plants are looking for optimally.
Okay. So there's so many different options out there, and I think it can be really confusing which one to pick. What are some other important things that I should be looking for in a good LED light?
Yep. So, BJ, one of the things you just mentioned is a good warranty. And, one of the things I've noticed that is most of the boxes that I read in a store don't say anything about warranty. So that tells me that when you get it home, other than being able to return it within the first 30 days, you may not have a warranty. So look to get a really good quality light, I'd say a minimum of a 3-year warranty. Ideally, a 5-year warranty is what you would want. The other thing to look for is disregard things like watts. One of the things that you see in a lot of these lights on Amazon in particular, they'll say 1,000-watt light.
Yeah, 600 watts, 1,000 watts.
There's not a single LED light out there, unless it's the ones that you hang in the top of a greenhouse, that's going to draw 600 watts. What they're trying to do is say that that's the equivalent of a 600 or 1,000-watt light that you would have used when you used high-pressure sodium or metal halide lighting 5 to 10 years ago. So disregard it, in terms of wattage. Look at how much wattage it actually does draw. And in reality, I always tell people you want the least amount of wattage for the maximum amount of energy that plants need to grow. The other thing is look for is the coverage area. How big an area will that light actually cover for either your seed starting or for your full plant production? So that should be a map or some sort of information on there is how big an area will it cover? So that's also really important. And then the third thing I would say is look for the spectrum. Get as much red light in there as you can.
Okay.
You want to get a little bit of blue, and you want to get a decent amount of green so that the plants look good.
So if I'm looking at a box and they don't say anything about the red light, or, should that be a red flag, or should I assume it's got everything it needs?
I would stay away from it because if it doesn't say anything, if it doesn't tell you the warranty, if it doesn't tell you the coverage area, if it doesn't tell you the spectrum, they're hiding something. And if they're hiding something, most likely you don't want to use that light because it's not going to do what you want.
Well, thanks for clarifying wattage because, as growers, we're kind of trained to think in wattage for all this time because we didn't have the LEDs. So on our LEDs, when we mention wattage at all, it's just the amount of electricity that it's using. It has nothing to do with the quality or the quantity of output.
Right.
What you're saying is that you get all of the stuff that the plants need, but you're paying less to get that energy.
Significantly less. And
Okay.
that becomes really important if you have a lot of lights. And if you're a commercial grower,
True.
you want that light to be as efficient as you can possibly make it.
There's a lot of growers out there who think you should start with blue light, but then move on to red light as you want more fruits and flowers and things like that. So what's going on with that story?
I've sort of wondered where that came from as well. And I researched it and talked to people about it. And there's a professor at Purdue, Krishna Namali, who I work with very closely. And I asked him specifically that question.
Oh.
And his answer was he's not sure where that myth actually came from. I mean, you'll hear people say, well, use 6,000 Kelvin for seed starting or for getting your plants going. And the only thing I can think of is that blue light makes plants very short and stubby. And maybe people want to just start that way. But the truth is, in the past, the only type of light that we had available to us was different color temperature fluorescents. So they said, well, just start that way, and then you could move to a redder light in the long run, because that's all we had available.
So the lights were either blue or red.
Right. So you do want some blue, for sure. You
Okay.
want some blue. And in reality, the amount of blue that you're getting out of an LED light may actually, in intensity, be as big as a high color temperature fluorescent, because you're getting so much more light anyways. But the truth is, red light is the real magic for plants.
Okay.
So now with LEDs, we can give them not only the right level of intensity, but the right ratios to make the plants really good. So that's a myth. I would forget that, you want, 6,000 Kelvin, because that's not really what plants are going to actually
So
look for.
simply having blue light does not give you better growth.
No.
So a question I get a lot is, when do I really start my seeds? How many weeks you plant ahead is usually based on your last frost date. And there are a lot of seed starting calendars out there based on your zone that can tell you, based on your last frost date, when you should start your seeds. And one thing that I think is important to know about Happy Leaf is because you are getting such a good light, it's giving the plants everything it needs, that I found immediately, well, the first year I did it, that it actually shortened my grow time. So if it says, for example, plant 7 to 8 weeks before last frost, my plants were ready in 6 weeks. They were really just developmentally ready to go out, and it really sped up the process. What would you say in terms of adjusting when you're growing, when you're using Happy Leaf, maybe against a fluorescent?
I ran into that same problem where I was planting too early. And one of the things that I found is that I could reduce the amount of time that it takes to get plants ready to plant roughly by 2 weeks where we are.
And we live in such a cold climate. I think people really jump the gun and we're getting excited about starting seeds and they're going through the
Yep.
seed catalogs, but you can actually end up with an overgrown plant that's root bound. And all that extra time and love you gave it seems not to be worth
Yeah,
it.
that's the lesson that I've told a lot of people is they should start a few weeks later than they would normally start, just for that same reason.
When I'm starting my seeds, I'm under Happy Leaf. I've saved myself 2 weeks so I can get some other things done. Do I put the lights on the seeds right away? Because a lot of seeds need darkness to germinate, so I've buried them in the soil a little bit. Do you put your lights on your seedlings right away, and why or why not?
I do. Like you said, you don't need light on the plant or the seed to germinate because it's below ground. But within 3-4 days, it's starting to peek through. And as soon as it does that, it wants light. So just to make it easy, when I start my seeds, is I put them in the ground, water them well, and I turn the light on for 16 to 18 hours a day and forget about it. And they're ready to go. So obviously you do need to water them regularly, but the light's on as soon as they come up out of the ground. They're getting their light and they'll start growing towards it pretty quickly.